Hi everyone, welcome to Spilled Ink, a podcast about literary and cultural theory.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Dr. Pitts' Literature and Cultural Theory class. Thank you so much for all your donation. Thank you so much for all of your help. My name is Alexa Thresh, and I'm here with
Cassie Crensis.
And
the Dominic Turnia.
Yes. Well, we are so happy to be here today, and today's topic is all about John Dewey and art as an experience. We have been talking about this topic for a while together, and we recognize the importance of it and the importance of documenting it. So our thesis is particularly interested in the analysis of art, whatever form of art it may be, and how the experience of it has changed over the years. Now, that being said, we first need to focus on the question of what art is. What is art? What do you consider art? What does art culture consider art? So I know personally, the very first thing I think about is basic paintings, drawings, basic art. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm a fan of it. So that is what interested me, and I think that there has been a great change of how we experience art over decades and even centuries, because we do not experience art the same way they did in the Baroque period compared to maybe like the postmodernism period. And I just find that very fascinating, and I think that that is just one form of art. There are many other forms of art. Do you guys have anything you want to mention?
Definitely, yeah. So with music, I think that's the key aspect of art that I look to nowadays. While I'm a lover of literature and reading and writing, the music industry has really taken me by surprise, not only with their ability to constantly evolve over time and have these amazing artists like rise to the challenge and creating authentic material, even though that's debatable nowadays, but it's true. And I think what I also loved about art as the experience is it's having much more meaning, I think, nowadays. And in a time where we're definitely thinking about who we are as a societal culture, I think it's important to go to these artists who are unabashedly and unapologetically addressing the issues through the use of their music. So that's my favorite thing right now.
No,
that's what I'm into.
That's really great. And Cass, do you have anything you want to mention?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go off with Dom. I do agree with you, Alexa, about that when you think of art, you do tend to think of like paintings and sculptures and stuff like that. But when it comes to like what I think is like the most, what people really like can relate to the most is movies. I would say that movies are what people can like actually relate to the most, and more people like watch movies more often than they can get out to go to a museum, and like really you can get the message of a movie more than when you actually like you don't sit and listen to music and analyze it particularly. I mean, like I do, but most people don't. So when you watch a movie, you tend to get the overlying theme of it, which kind of relates, like it gets you into that experience more, and you kind of go out to the movies just to like you're more willing to go and watch a movie than you are to go to a museum or something like that.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, and I think that with all of these topics, one thing that they all have in common is that people analyze them. It might not be the first go-to thing for when you're listening to a song, but there are YouTube videos, and it's become popular culture to start analyzing the very details of music, and what does that music video mean? Why did that person use that word instead of that?
That's also a big thing with movies now. Like you can go on YouTube and like people are like
Easter eggs.
Then they're like, let's analyze this very specific scene, and then like you can go in and an entire movie will be broken down, and you're like, I didn't even know that was possible.
I definitely think I can agree with all of that. I want to circle back, and we brought up John Dewey, and I want to focus even more on John Dewey.
Good man.
Yes, he's a good man. He had
Smart
lots
man.
of great ideas, and I think we need to highlight that some of those ideas, as we mentioned, is like how experience has changed for art over the years. Now, that is not just his only thought, his only thesis in his papers, but I remember that when I first read about John Dewey, I was just fascinated by the idea that when you look at art, when you listen to a song, when you watch a movie, you are truly experiencing it. And you can go to watch that movie 2 days later, and it's not going to be the same experience. It's not going to be brand new anymore, but it also might be, you might notice something you didn't before, and you might fall even more in love with it, or maybe you'll notice that maybe like CGI in it wasn't as good as you had thought, and then you maybe fall out of love with the movie. And I think that's very fascinating. I think that's a central idea in Dewey's art as experience, that it does not have to stay the same.
Yeah, I think we've all done that before, where we're like fascinated by seeing something for the first time, and then you kind of rewatch it and you get that second experience where you're not getting the full experience like the first time, but you're having more of a narrow experience. And through that narrow experience, you start to like see those flaws in the movies, like the CGI, or like even reading a book or listening to a song as well. Like you can be shook one day, and then next thing you know, you listen to it and it just doesn't have its same effect anymore. So
I 110% agree.
Some of the things that like can lead to that though is also like your own personal experiences have changed between the one watch or the one listen or the one looking at that painting to the next time you see it, and you've kind of, your perception of that object has changed because your own personal your own personal life experiences have changed with it.
Yeah, and I want to go into how that inspired me, and it really led me to write about the art over the periods of time. So this podcast is a hybrid podcast. It includes essays in between the podcasts to explain and to go into further detail about the very interesting topics we are attempting, just because it's so detailed, attempting to truly define and put words to. So in my essay for the hybrid podcast, I really focused on art. I looked at 3 different periods of art. I did Baroque, I did Post-Impressionism, and I did Postmodernism. That being said, I took these specific periods because when I go to an art museum, I am fascinated going through the different exhibitions and just seeing the true difference between them. Yet they are all considered art and the same form of art, that being said. So what inspired me was going to the Toledo Art Museum and comparing its work of arts to the museum in MoMA, a famous museum, and seeing how they are just as rich in detail and in meaning and in inspiration as each other. Like, you might not think of Toledo Art Museum as the first museum off the bat of your head. You're probably going to think of maybe the Modern Museum, the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, or the Art Institute in Chicago, yet they all have a significant meaning because museums and the art within them are very central and related to each other. They have Monet in Toledo, they have Monet in MoMA, they have Monet in Art Institute, and they have Monets everywhere because Monet painted a lot. And to me, the experience of Monet has only grown for me. I've gone to the Art Institute multiple times, and every time I see a cliff walk at Pourville, I believe that's how you pronounce it, I am just in love with it. It's these 2 ladies on a hill, painted beautifully. It's Impressionism, and I am just fascinated by it. Every time I see it, I just want to just stare at it. I want to be in that scene because I can practically feel the wind from standing at the top of the cliff overlooking the ocean. I find it fascinating, and I know that that's similar for what you guys have experienced with music and movies, but that's truly what has inspired me, going to these art museums and seeing this art, to write more about art.
it's a good point, yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically how this hybrid podcast will work. We will record a podcast, we will talk about a very difficult, very intricate subject, and then to make sure we cover all our bases, we'll go into more detail.
That was just beautifully said.
Thank you.
That was just really beautifully said. I'm just like taking that all in right now.
That's great. Well, I hope our listeners can agree with you, Cass, and think that was all very interesting. And I'm excited for them to read our essay. I will be connected at the bottom of this bottom of this podcast, and we will talk to you at our next episode.
Sounds good to me, yeah.
Great.
And then if you haven't already, go like and subscribe to the podcast, and be sure to follow our Patreon, okay? So
Yes, thank you.